Hey guys, Pretzelman945 here. Welcome back to another video. In today's video, I am going to be talking about my first impressions of Hollow Knight Silksong. Uh, because it's been about 2 weeks since the game came out. Um, and there are several things that I want to talk about. Um, now, first off, let me start off with the obvious glaze. The obvious but extremely deserved glaze. This game looks fucking beautiful, and in a way, I feel like it's very close, but like I feel like there's just something about the backgrounds and environments that look just a tiny tweak more like polished and pretty than Hollow Knight. And maybe that's just because so far I think I've seen like more vibrant areas with different colors, whereas like Hollow Knight had a lot more like more muted grays and blues in several of its areas. But I don't know. There's just something that makes it seem like there's just like a little bit of polish to the artwork, which I think is cool. Um, and of course, the music is incredible. Christopher Larkin is just a goat. Um, Something interesting I do notice about this game is the fact that I obviously haven't listened to the full soundtrack yet. I don't do that when I'm still playing a game because I don't want to like potentially be spoiled on something through the soundtrack. And also, I believe that hearing the soundtrack the first time you're doing a boss fight is the right way to experience it. Um, and then there is also what was I talking about? Oh yeah. So the thing that I've noticed that I find interesting about this game's soundtrack compared to Hollow Knight is the way that in several areas, instead of a lot of the songs having a clear, like, melodic line to them, I guess, they feel a lot more ambient and kind of like, um, nice harmonic background sounds that really complement a lot of the peacefulness of a particular area. And I think it does wonders in terms of like really setting a nice tone. Not that like the original game's soundtrack didn't really do that, but I think there's an interesting change with how like more vibey these music pieces are, and I think it's really cool how they tend to what's the word I'm thinking of? Complement certain areas really well. Though my favorite pieces of music so far easily are the boss themes. Every single boss theme is an absolute um and speaking of boss themes, I think it's a good transition to talk about bosses. I have fought Any bosses? No, five. I thought it was four. It's five bosses I've fought so far. Um, and I think that they're solid. They're obviously much more challenging, and I'll talk about the difficulty whole thing in a second. Um, and um, in terms of like going boss by boss to break it down, this will also give you an idea of like progress in the game because I'm not very far. So please do not spoil me past the point where I am because um I actually just beat Morrowind tonight, which felt great because I was stuck on that boss for a while. Um and I am now in Shellwood, which is a beautiful area. Might be my favorite looking area in the game so far. Either that or Deep Ducks. Uh now the moss I don't remember what it was called, the moss something. It's like the very first boss that you fight. It's really easy, just like swoosh back and forth. Uh, the Bell Beast did make me kind of lose my mind a little bit. It took me several attempts to beat that thing, but I now I like it as the fast travel system. I think it's cute. I just do not have enough rosaries ever, and I'm gonna talk about that when I get to the minor issues I have with the game. Um, Lace is probably my favorite boss so far. That counter flurry attack she has can go sit in a pile of crap, but everything else about that boss is really cool because of all the bosses that one uh um it took me less than the Bell Beast, uh but I think the it's like in between the Bell Beast and the Moss thing. Like second least amount of attempts that I had to beat it, which was still quite a few. It still took me quite a bit to beat Lace, but uh, Lace is a very fun boss that I think really is a great tester of your early game skill with a lot of the moves, and especially once you get the dash. Fourth chorus, I honestly kind of lost my mind to a bit. I tried to beat him like 3 hours straight, and then I uh turned the game off, came back the next day, beat it one twice, which I've noticed seems to be a pretty frequent pattern with the bosses in this game. Morwing, I didn't really lose my mind over. It didn't take me nearly as many attempts to beat that thing as fourth chorus. Um, the second phase is difficult, and with all the stuff moving around the screen, I just equate that to me not really liking Greymore as an area overall. Like I kind of get the idea behind it, but I think it's just not very well designed, and I think it should have been a lot better lit than it actually was. But overall, that boss wasn't bad. Now to talk about probably the biggest hot topic of the game so far, the difficulty. So firstly, I want to make the point that the fact that this game got into controversy over the difficulty is fucking stupid. It's incredibly stupid. Now, is the game balls to the wall hard? Yes. Is it harder than Hollow Knight? Yes. Is it one of the hardest games I've probably ever played? Yes. But like, okay, to to quote the popular Hornet soundbite, get good. Like, seriously, I think it is so ridiculous the fact that this game even has any, and I'll put in quotes again, controversy over the difficulty, because I think that anyone that is seriously complaining about the difficulty in this game is just a serious whining baby. Um and I think that if you happen to see anyone talking about Silksong that way, then I would say that's an easy case to immediately not trust their opinion whatsoever. Um, Now, regarding the actual difficulty with the of the game, in terms of my own opinion, as I just mentioned, it is very hard and probably one of the hardest games I've ever played. But I don't know what it is. There's something about, and I'll try, and I'll maybe try and encompass this with words when I talk about the combat in a second. But there's something about it, even though it is like way harder than Hollow Knight itself. Um, there's something about it which just feels more fun to play, and it doesn't feel as frustrating when you die. And I'm gonna talk about more specific aspects when I get to the navigation and such. Um, but you know, while we're talking about difficulty, I do have um two slight issues with the way the game works. The first of which regarding like enemies and difficulty and all that. I really dislike how in this game there are a lot more of these like generic enemy gauntlet rooms that you need to proceed. There is just a lot of these areas that I find incredibly annoying. Um, and honestly, some of these areas have gotten me stuck longer than some of the bosses in this game, which I just don't think is very good balance. If and honestly, in terms of like difficulty and the game overall, I would say that that is probably my biggest issue slash complaint with the game, just because a lot of those enemy gauntlet rooms and the fact that you have to go through them to progress, I just find it quite annoying. Um, my second more minor issue is I don't like, let's put this into words. I don't like that generic enemies don't drop so many rosaries because, and I know that's also part of the difficulty aspect, but and honestly, this is much more of a nitpick compared to the enemy gauntlet room thing, but like I do wish that there was just generally more money available in the game. I think it would make um some parts of the playing experience a bit smoother. Although, um speaking of navigation, um this is one thing I am not going to do in this video is give a definitive judgment between whether Silksong or Hollow Knight is better, but um, what I will say right now in this first impressions video is that I think that Silksong has better navigation than Hollow Knight, and I think that is a pretty damn easy thing for me to say because um I feel like in Hollow Knight, one of the reasons, despite the fact that it's up there with my favorite games of all, one of the reasons why I never got close to really finishing the game is because there were a lot of parts there, not a lot, but several sections I felt where I had played that um benches were too far away from my death location, or I would get lost trying to get back to one location. I would end up dying over and over again, or there would be certain areas that I would get stuck on, like the place where I stopped playing Hollow Knight was a place where I got stuck in City of Tears. And I just kept dying to the same loop of enemies. Um, and and to that end, I think Silksong is better in this department because even without a map, not only do I think it is easier to find your way around and remember where you've gone, but also I feel like there are more frequent placing of benches, especially when it comes to the proximity of boss fights, which makes um like going back and getting your Silk Cocoon thing, which is this game's version of the soul, or void or mask or whatever. Um uh I like this aspect of Silk Song a lot better because the navigation is a lot better and it just feels a lot smoother to explore, I think. Now, moving on to the combat. I don't have a clear winner yet on which game I like better in terms of combat. However, I do love the way that Hornet moves. I think it is a very unique move set, and I like how it seems to be more like focused on the range aspect compared to less consistent close up hits, but it means that there's a higher combo potential. I really like that balance, and it's a very nice difference from the original game. Now, I have seen a lot of people complain that they don't really like the downward attack, which is like the diagonal pogo, and I don't really understand why people don't like that because I think it's a really unique addition to this game, and I think if they would have added um just the generic downward pogo, I think that wouldn't have been nearly as original, and I think that this one fits with the general vibe of Hornet's moveset a lot more. And I really like the kind of more unique combo potential and platforming challenges that it provides. So I don't really understand personally anyway why people dislike that particular move because I find it quite fun to kind of play around with. Um, uh, is that every point I wanted to hit? Yeah. I think that's every point I wanted to hit. I'm about like 11 hours into the game. I just got to Stallwood. I think that's the name. I've probably already forgotten. Um, but yeah, let me know what your first impressions are on the game, but please do not spoil. I know that's generally my whole thing is I tend to spoil things on this channel, but I am begging you. There's still so much more to this game. I feel like I need to experience, because the game is huge. So please, no spoilers in the comments, please and thank you. And spoiler free, let me know what you think of the game so far. Or, as I've seen a lot of people have probably already finished it, considering it's been out for 2 weeks and I just play. And I'm just playing it really, really slow. Then let me know what you thought of the full game again without spoilers. But yeah, that's gonna do it for now. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye bye.